A ruthless billionaire woman wanted to prove her power, so she poured a full glass of red wine over a poor maid's head, just to make her elite guests laugh. She thought humiliation was entertainment. She thought no one would dare to stop her. But she made one fatal mistake. She did it in front of a Marine and his loyal dog. What happened next would shake her perfect world to its core. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story moves your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more. The humid air of Astoria Bay clung to the skin like a silk glove soaked in perfume. The grand estate of the Hale family shimmered beneath the golden twilight, where chandeliers threw diamonds of light across polished marble floors, and every smile carried the weight of pretense. The sea outside was calm, but within the mansion, storms brewed quietly behind champagne flutes. Marcus Hale stood near the edge of the terrace, his posture rigid, his dark eyes surveying the glittering crowd with the kind of controlled disinterest learned by soldiers and sons of powerful mothers. He was 34, tall and broad-shouldered, his body carved by years of Marine discipline rather than gym vanity. A faint scar traced the line of his jaw, a souvenir from a night raid in Helmand that went wrong, a night he rarely spoke of. His close-cropped brown hair revealed a touch of gray at the temples, and the trimmed stubble on his face gave him a rugged, restless look. Marcus didn't belong here, not among men who'd never held a rifle or buried a brother in arms. He had returned to Astoria Bay only because his mother insisted. Evelyn Hale, his mother, was a woman sculpted for power. In her late 50s, with silver blonde hair, swept into a flawless chignon and posture as straight as her moral compass was flexible, she moved through the crowd like a queen among courtiers. She built her empire on luxury real estate and social connections, her words always measured, her smile weaponized. To Evelyn, her son was an extension of the Hale legacy, not an individual. Marcus knew this. That's why he stayed at the edge, apart, his glass of mineral water untouched. The music swelled, a quartet playing something elegant and empty. Waiters moved like ghosts, their white gloves and forced smiles hiding exhaustion. Among them was Nora. She was 23, with dark chestnut hair tied into a tight ponytail that did little to hide the stray strands clinging to her damp forehead. Her skin was warm olive, her figure slender but tense from long hours on her feet. There was a quiet grace to her movements, even as her hands trembled slightly when she reached for a tray of crystal glasses. Her eyes, hazel, large, and uncertain, flicked nervously from guest to guest, scanning for any sign of disapproval. She'd been raised in foster homes, working since 16 to support herself. Her job tonight was just another gig, another evening of pretending not to exist. The hostess herself had yet to acknowledge her presence, but another woman had. Vivian Roth was impossible to miss. In her early 60s but eternally chasing 40, she was a billionaire widow whose fortune came from pharmaceuticals and scandal. She wore a gown of deep emerald silk that clung to her surgically refined body, a diamond necklace heavy enough to buy a small island resting on her collarbones. Her smile was as sharp as the heels of her Louboutins. Vivian thrived on dominance. Humiliation was her favorite. Art form. "Darling, Evelyn," Vivian purred as she approached the hostess, "your parties always make me forget that poverty still exists." Her laughter was brittle and cold. Evelyn responded with the kind of polite chuckle that said she agreed but would never admit it. As the evening deepened, Nora moved between tables, carrying a tray of champagne. Sweat beaded at the base of her neck, the heavy air pressed against her lungs. Her fingers slipped slightly, one glass wobbling before she caught it. But Vivian saw. The older woman's lips curved into something cruel. "Careful, sweetheart," she said, her voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You almost spilled $500 worth of champagne. Do you even make that in a week?" A few chuckles rippled through the group. Nora bowed her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am." Vivian's eyes glinted. "Sorry? Oh, we can't have sorry at such a beautiful event. Let's make it memorable, shall we?" She reached for the nearest glass of red wine, Cabernet, full-bodied and unforgiving, and before anyone could react, she tilted it forward. The liquid cascaded down Nora's face and hair, staining her white uniform crimson. Gasps, laughter, the scent of wine mingled with perfume and shock. "This," Vivian said coolly, "is the color of where you belong. You'll remember that." For a heartbeat, Nora couldn't move. The cold liquid soaked through her shirt, clinging to her skin. She heard someone snicker, someone else whisper. The room spun, not from dizziness, but from shame so violent it made her hands shake. Her throat constricted, but she refused to cry, not here, not in front of them. And then, silence. Marcus Hale was standing in the doorway, his gaze fixed on the scene. His jaw flexed once, twice. Behind him, the reflection of the chandelier glimmered off the medals still boxed at home, the ones he no longer displayed because they reminded him of the people who didn't come back. He saw the tremor in Nora's shoulders, the cruel smirk curling Vivian's lips, and something inside him, the discipline, the restraint, fractured. He moved through the crowd like a current of quiet fury, his presence cutting through the chatter. Evelyn's voice caught mid-sentence as her son passed her without a glance. "Marcus," she hissed, but he didn't hear or pretended not to. He reached Nora, who stood frozen, her breath shallow. Up close, he could see she was barely holding herself together, her eyes fixed on the floor. He removed his tuxedo jacket and without a word draped it over her shoulders. The gesture was small, but in that room it was seismic. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Nora shook her head just slightly. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice cracked on the lie. Vivian let out a brittle laugh. "Oh, come now, Major or Captain, or whatever you are these days. Surely you don't mean to get sentimental. Over the help?" Marcus turned his head slowly toward her. His eyes, calm, dark, and utterly without fear, met hers. "I mean to remind you," he said evenly, "that dignity isn't something your money can buy." The words fell like a blade. No one spoke. The music had stopped. Only the distant crash of waves filled the silence. Evelyn's face was a portrait of horror, her smile petrified in place. She stepped forward quickly. Marcus apologized to Mrs. Roth. She meant no harm. But he didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket, dropped his invitation card onto the nearest table and said, "I think I've done my duty for the evening." Then he turned, guiding Nora gently toward the exit. Rex, his dog, a 6-year-old Belgian Malinois with black-tipped fur and intelligent amber eyes, stood waiting near the door, ever alert. The animal's gaze followed Marcus and the girl, tail low but steady, as if sensing something important had just begun. Behind them, murmurs erupted. Evelyn called his name once more, but he didn't stop. Outside, the night was cooler, the sea wind a balm against the heat of humiliation still clinging to Nora's skin. She clutched his jacket tighter around her shoulders, her voice trembling. "You didn't have to." "Yes," he interrupted softly. "I did." For the first time that night, she looked at him fully. There was no pity in his expression, only a calm conviction that felt like safety. For a girl who had spent her life unseen, it was almost unbearable. From the open doors of the mansion, faint laughter rose again, Vivian's voice brittle and venomous. "A Marine and a maid," she sneered. "How poetic." Marcus didn't look back, but his jaw tightened, his hand brushing Rex's head in silent thought. Somewhere in that gesture was a promise, and somewhere behind them, in the heart of the glittering mansion, a phone vibrated in Vivian Roth's clutch purse. She glanced at the message and smiled. "Tomorrow," she murmured, "we'll see who really knows their place." The garden behind the Hale estate was a world apart from the glittering chaos inside. The scent of saltwater and jasmine mingled with the faint hum of distant laughter. Moonlight poured over marble statues and palm trees, swaying gently in the night breeze. Marcus Hale walked down the stone path, his jacket gone, his white shirt rolled at the sleeves. Beside him, Rex moved with silent precision, his paws barely making a sound on the wet grass. The 6-year-old Malinois' lean, muscular body was built for motion, his coat catching the silver glow of the moon. His ears twitched, alert, as if he could still hear the distant echoes of war somewhere beyond the waves. Marcus stopped when he saw her. Nora sat near the fountain, shoulders hunched, rinsing the crimson-stained fabric of her uniform under a trickle of water from a garden hose. The white cotton refused to return to its former color. The red wine clung like a bruise that wouldn't fade. Her dark hair had come loose, strands sticking to her cheeks, and her fingers were raw from scrubbing. She looked so small against the vastness of the manicured garden, a fragile figure swallowed by luxury that was never meant for her. Rex approached first. His tail lowered as he trotted closer, nostrils flaring to the faint metallic scent of wine and salt. Nora froze, startled, but Rex's posture was calm, his head slightly bowed, his body language speaking a language older than words. Slowly, cautiously, she extended her hand. "Hey, boy," she whispered, her voice shaking. You're not supposed to be out here, are you?" Rex sniffed her fingers, then licked them once, a slow, deliberate gesture of trust. Marcus, watching from a few paces away, felt something tighten in his chest. Rex had never shown affection to strangers, not in 6 years of working beside him in Iraq, not even to medics who treated Marcus after the explosion that left him scarred. "She's fine," Marcus said quietly. "He only trusts people who mean no harm." Nora looked up, her eyes glinting in the low light. She saw him properly now. Not the man from the newspaper headlines or the son of the hostess, but someone worn, real, and unexpectedly kind. His face was angular, the faint shadows under his eyes hinting at sleepless nights. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she murmured. I couldn't go back inside." "You don't owe them anything," Marcus said, his voice firm but gentle. He shrugged off the last of his formal pretense, sitting down on the edge of the fountain across from her. "That woman, Vivian Roth, she's the kind of person who mistakes cruelty for strength. Don't let her win by believing she's above you." Nora laughed softly, but it was a hollow sound. "People like her don't need to win. They already own everything." "Not everything," Marcus replied. "They don't own how you carry yourself after." The night air cooled. Nora pulled the soaked uniform against her, shivering. Marcus noticed and took off his undershirt, leaving the thin cotton of his dress shirt over him. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "You'll get sick otherwise." "I can't take—" "You can," he interrupted. "And you should." His tone left no room for argument, though his eyes were soft. As she took the shirt, her fingers brushed his. For a fleeting moment, Marcus saw the reflection of another night, another woman crying in the dust of Kandahar after the village they were meant to protect was bombed by mistake. He had promised himself never to watch innocents burn again. That night had changed him. It made him leave the Marines before they could send him back into the same cycle of moral grayness. Rex lay between them now, his head resting on his paws, eyes half closed but still watchful. Nora smiled faintly. "He's beautiful. What's his name?" "Rex," Marcus said. "Means king. He doesn't know it, but he saved my life more than once." Nora nodded, glancing toward the mansion. "I should go. They'll notice I'm gone." "They noticed you before," Marcus said, a bitter edge in his tone. "Only difference now is they showed you what kind of people they are." She hesitated, looking down at her hands. "You shouldn't have stepped in. You'll have to deal with them too." "I've dealt with worse." The answer hung in the air. From the house, faint music began again. Someone had turned the laughter back on, pretending nothing had happened. Nora rose, wringing out the shirt, and Marcus stood too. She was smaller up close, barely reaching his shoulder, but there was steel behind her eyes now. Before she could say more, another voice interrupted. "Marcus Hale!" A low drawl came from the path behind them. A man stepped out from the shadows, tall, lean, with slicked-back blonde hair and a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. He wore an expensive charcoal suit, but his tie was loosened, his movements lazy, predatory. This was Dean Mercer, Evelyn Hale's public relations manager and longtime friend of Vivian Roth. At 40, Dean was handsome in a hollow way, an aging golden boy who'd learned that manipulation was easier than morality. He carried a half-empty glass of whiskey, and the kind of arrogance that came with knowing people like him rarely faced consequences. "Your mother's looking for you," Dean said, "and she's not pleased, neither is Mrs. Roth." Marcus's expression hardened. "Tell them I'll talk to them when I have something to say." Dean took a sip of his drink. "You embarrassed the wrong woman tonight. Vivian Roth owns half the board members your mother works with. If you think walking out with a maid is some noble gesture, think again. You've just made yourself an enemy." Marcus stepped closer, his height casting a shadow over Dean. "Good," he said. "I prefer to see my enemies." Clearly, Dean's smirk faltered. He glanced at Nora, his gaze lingering a moment too long. "Cute, but not worth it." He turned on his heel and walked back toward the house, muttering, "This'll end badly." When he was gone, Nora exhaled shakily. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. Marcus looked down at Rex, then back at her. "He's right about one thing," he said. "This isn't over. They won't forget tonight. But neither will I." She hesitated, then said quietly, "Why did you help me?" He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Because no one helped me when I needed it." Rex stirred at his feet, ears pricking. A faint rustle came from the far hedge, just the wind maybe, or something more deliberate. Marcus's instincts sharpened. He scanned the shadows but saw nothing. Still, he didn't like it. "You should go home," he said. "I'll walk you to your car." Nora nodded. They walked side by side toward the service gate, Rex padding silently between them. The night air felt heavier now, as if watching. Marcus didn't know that behind the mansion, on the second-floor balcony, Vivian Roth stood with a phone pressed to her ear, her green gown glinting under the lights. "Yes," she murmured to the voice on the line. "I want this handled quietly. The Marine and the girl. Make sure it looks like an accident." And as the sea breeze rolled in, carrying with it the scent of rain, Rex lifted his head and growled low in his throat. The storm came in from the Gulf after midnight, a slow-moving curtain of rain sweeping over the cracked rooftops of Coral Point. Thunder rolled far out at sea, and the neon sign of the small roadside motel flickered between blue and nothing. Marcus Hale stood by the window of room 12, the muscles in his jaw working as he watched the rain wash down the empty street. Rex lay near the door, head on his paws, his eyes open and alert even in rest. The dog was restless tonight, his instincts alive in the electric air. Marcus trusted that instinct more than his own sleep-starved judgment. The room was small and worn, a single bed, 2 chairs, a peeling nightstand. Nora sat on the edge of the bed, wrapping a towel around her wet hair. Her face, pale beneath the flickering lamp, carried exhaustion deeper than the night could explain. She hadn't spoken much since Marcus brought her here. Her uniform hung drying over the bathroom door, Marcus's jacket still draped over her shoulders like borrowed armor. "They won't stop," she said finally, her voice a whisper barely audible over the rain. "People like Vivian, they always get away with it." Marcus didn't turn from the window. "Not always." She looked at him, her gaze studying the hard lines of his face, the scar cutting through his stubble. "You've seen people like her before?" "I've seen worse," he said. His voice carried the weight of something buried, something he didn't share. The night in Kandahar, when orders came too late, when civilians died because someone rich and comfortable in Washington hesitated. It had carved a quiet fury into him that never healed. "The difference is," he continued, "this time, I'm not taking orders." A sharp bark from Rex broke the silence. The dog had risen, head turned toward the door, body tense. Marcus moved instantly, motion smooth, silent, trained. He peered through the peephole, nothing but the shadow of rain. Still, he felt it, that invisible shift in the air before danger. Across town, in a dark warehouse near the docks, Victor Mancini stubbed out a cigar and adjusted the cuffs of his tailored black shirt. He was a man who wore refinement like a disguise. In his early 50s, he had the bearing of an Italian aristocrat, and the eyes of a man who had seen too much blood. His salt and pepper hair was cut close, his jaw clean, his movements deliberate. Mancini had once been a soldier, not for a country, but for money, before he learned that information and intimidation paid better than bullets. Now, he was the quiet solution to loud problems for the rich. He turned to the 3 men waiting by the door, all dressed in dark clothes. "The woman stays unharmed," he said in a voice smooth as glass. "The Marine, however, make sure he remembers what happens when someone forgets their place." He handed the leader a phone, its screen displaying a photo of Marcus and Nora leaving the Hale estate. "No guns unless necessary. I don't want noise. Accidents are easier to bury." Back at the motel, Marcus double-checked the locks. His instincts screamed that something was wrong, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Nora," he said, "if anything happens, you go out the back with Rex. Don't stop. Don't argue. Just move." She opened her mouth to protest, but the words froze when the sound came. Faint at first, then unmistakable, the crunch of gravel beneath tires. Marcus looked out the window. A white cargo van had stopped across the street, engine still running. No lights, no markings. "Get down," he said quietly. The door exploded inward before the echo of his words faded. Two men in dark jackets surged through the opening. The third came through the bathroom window. Marcus moved fast, too fast for them to expect. He slammed the first man's wrist against the wall, the knife clattering away, then drove his elbow into the man's ribs. Rex launched forward, a blur of muscle and fury, hitting the second man square in the chest. The scream was short, muffled by the storm. The third man caught Nora by the arm, dragging her toward the door. "Don't!" Marcus shouted, grabbing the broken lamp and hurling it. The glass shattered against the man's temple, and Nora broke free, stumbling back into the corner. Smoke rose from the shorted wire of the lamp, filling the room with the smell of ozone and fear. "Out!" Marcus barked. Rex backed toward the door, herding Nora ahead of him. The two surviving men regrouped outside, shouting orders over the rain. One drew a pistol. Marcus fired first, his single suppressed shot catching the gunman's shoulder. The man screamed and fell against the van, blood mixing with the downpour. The driver cursed and slammed the van into gear, tires spinning on wet asphalt. The wounded man scrambled in, the other covered him, returning fire. Marcus pulled Nora behind the low concrete wall by the motel's office. "Stay down," he ordered. Rex crouched beside him, teeth bared, rain running off his fur in streams. Within seconds, it was over. The van roared away, taillights vanishing into the sheets of rain. Marcus waited until the sound faded completely before standing. His shirt clung to him, soaked, his breath steady but his pulse racing. He walked to where the attackers had fallen, and that's when he saw it. Half buried in a puddle, screen cracked but still lit, was a phone. He picked it up carefully. On the glowing screen, a message was still open. From Vivian Roth. "Make sure the Marine regrets ever playing hero." Nora came up beside him, clutching the jacket tighter around her. "Is that—" "Yes," Marcus said, his voice flat. "And it means we're not imagining this." Rex whined softly, the sound almost human. Marcus crouched to pat the dog's head, murmuring, "Good work, buddy. You kept us breathing tonight." In the distance, sirens began to wail. Someone must have called the police after hearing gunfire. Marcus looked at Nora. Her eyes were wide, frightened, but there was something new in them too. Resolve. "What happens now?" she asked. Marcus looked down at the phone, rainwater dripping off its cracked edge. "Now," he said, "we make them regret underestimating us." Thunder rumbled overhead, drowning out the approaching sirens. Marcus turned toward the motel's back alley, Rex at his side, Nora following close behind. The night swallowed them as the storm intensified, the first sparks of a much larger war igniting beneath the surface. The Miami morning broke bright and merciless, sunlight glinting off the glass towers like 1,000 eyes. In the precinct's cold gray interrogation room, the fluorescent lights hummed faintly above Marcus Hale as he stood beside Nora, his jaw set, his gaze fixed on the stack of documents that would either save them or destroy them. The smell of coffee and old metal filled the air. Rex lay quietly in the corner, his steady breathing the only sign of calm in a room humming with tension. The dog's fur, still damp from the storm, caught the light as he lifted his head, ears twitching toward the hallway. He didn't like confined spaces. Neither did Marcus. Across the table sat Detective Isabel Reyes, a woman in her late 40s with the poise of someone who had fought too many losing battles, but never surrendered one. Her dark brown hair, streaked faintly with silver, was pulled back in a functional knot. She wore a black blazer over a white blouse, sleeves rolled halfway to the elbows, revealing a tattoo of a small anchor on her wrist, a remnant perhaps of a younger, wilder version of herself. Her eyes were sharp, tired, and skeptical, scanning Marcus like a surgeon studying a wound. "So," Reyes began, flipping open the evidence folder. "You're telling me a billionaire socialite hired a corporate fixer to have a Marine and a waitress killed because she got embarrassed at a party?" Her tone was dry, but there was an undercurrent of curiosity beneath the cynicism. Marcus didn't flinch. "You'll find the proof in that phone." He gestured to the sealed evidence bag lying between them. "Vivian Roth's message came directly to Victor Mancini's crew. You can trace the call logs, timestamps, even the payment chain if you pull the metadata." Reyes raised an eyebrow. "You sound like you've done this before." "Not like this," he said. but I've seen what people like her pay to bury." Nora sat quietly beside him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow but steady. She'd changed out of the ruined uniform into a borrowed shirt and jeans that hung loosely on her slender frame. The exhaustion of the past 2 days had left its mark. Faint dark circles beneath her eyes, a tremor in her fingers she tried to hide. Still, there was a quiet dignity in her posture that Marcus found remarkable. Reyes leaned back in her chair, studying the pair. "All right, let's see what this is." She nodded to the young technician hovering by the door, Officer Miguel Renteria, a 20-something with sharp cheekbones, close-cropped black hair, and nervous energy radiating from his every movement. He carried a laptop under one arm and a forensic extraction kit in the other. Miguel had been working in cyber forensics for only 2 years, but had a reputation for uncovering digital trails no one else could. "Plug it in, Renteria," Reyes said. "Yes, ma'am." He set the phone on the table, hands steady despite the tension, and began the process. A few minutes passed, the only sounds being the click of keys and the distant buzz of phones outside. Then Miguel's voice cut through the silence. "Detective, you're going to want to see this." The laptop screen glowed with a stream of messages. Reyes leaned in, reading aloud. "Make sure the Marine regrets ever playing hero. Timestamped 2 hours before the attack. Another message. Payment clears when it's done. And here's the transfer log. Offshore account, Cayman Islands." Nora's breath caught. Marcus's jaw clenched. Reyes exhaled slowly, shutting the folder. "That's conspiracy to commit assault, attempted homicide, and obstruction at minimum. Congratulations, Ms. Roth just turned her little tantrum into a felony." She looked up at Marcus. "You're sure Mancini's your only thread?" "No," Marcus said. "He's the hand. But the order came from her, and she's not just going to hide. She'll be somewhere public, untouchable, pretending nothing happened." Reyes gave a grim smile. "Then we touch her where it hurts most, her reputation." 2 hours later, the sun hung high over the Azure Ballroom, the site of Evelyn Hale's latest charity brunch. The white tents shimmered across her manicured lawn, filled with Miami's elite, senators, tech founders, heirs, and socialites pretending to be philanthropists. The air smelled of champagne and roses. Beneath it all, tension buzzed like an electric current. Evelyn Hale, immaculate in a silver-gray gown, moved among her guests with a strained smile. Vivian Roth sat at the center table, draped in a sapphire dress that matched her eyes, cold, sharp, and alive with victory. Her laugh rang like glass. She leaned close to Dean Mercer, who hovered at her side, still nursing last night's hangover. "See?" Vivian purred. "Nothing sticks. They always crawl back to the shadows when the light hits." Dean forced a thin smile. "If you say so, Vivian." He didn't look convinced. He'd heard whispers all morning, about police inquiries, about a missing van, about names that shouldn't have been on record. Then the sirens came. The sound didn't belong here, not in this world of violins and gossip. The crowd turned, startled, as 3 unmarked black vehicles rolled up the drive. Guests exchanged nervous glances, cell phones half raised. The music stopped. Detective Reyes stepped out first, her presence slicing through the chatter. She moved with purpose, flanked by uniformed officers. The crowd parted like a tide. "Vivian Roth," she called, her voice carrying across the tent. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault and attempted murder." Vivian froze mid-laugh, her glass still raised. "Excuse me?" Reyes showed the warrant. "You can excuse yourself at the station." Cameras flashed, phones recorded. For the first time in her life, Vivian Roth had no script. "This is ridiculous," she spat, rising to her feet. "I demand to speak to my attorney." "You can call her from the precinct," Reyes said coolly. "After processing." Evelyn Hale's face turned white as marble. "Detective Reyes, there must be some mistake," she stammered. Reyes glanced at her. "No mistake, ma'am. Your son provided the evidence." The murmurs exploded. All eyes turned toward Marcus, who stood near the edge of the crowd beside Nora and Rex. He was out of uniform, but not out of presence. His shoulders were straight, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Nora looked fragile yet composed, holding herself with the quiet courage of someone who had already endured the worst. Rex stood between them, steady and calm, his amber eyes watchful. Vivian's composure shattered. You did this," she hissed. "You think anyone will believe a washed-up Marine and a nobody?" Marcus didn't answer. He stepped forward, unbuttoned his cuff, and removed the Hale family ring from his finger, a heavy gold band engraved with the crest his father once said represented legacy. He set it gently on the nearest table. "I don't need that to know who I am," he said, voice low but carrying. "I'm a Marine, not a prop for your charity games." A flash went off, a reporter catching the moment, then another. Vivian's wrists were cuffed. As she was led away through the stunned silence, she turned back once, eyes burning with venom. "This isn't over," she hissed. Reyes smirked. "It never is." And as the police cars drove away, Marcus felt the crowd's eyes on him, half admiration, half scandal. Nora's hand found his, trembling but sure. He squeezed it once. The world had seen them both now, the soldier who wouldn't bow and the girl who refused to disappear. The dawn came quietly to Key Haven, a sliver of gold spreading over the horizon where the sea met the sky. The gulls were already awake, circling lazily above the water, and the rhythmic crash of waves against the wooden pier was the only sound breaking the peace. The salt-laced wind carried the scent of roasted coffee beans and ocean spray from the little cafe by the shore. The Brave Cup. Nora stood behind the counter, her hair now loose and lighter from the sun, the once fragile waitress, now a woman whose calm strength filled the small space like light. Her skin had regained its warmth, her eyes no longer darted nervously. A month had passed since the chaos of Miami, since Vivian Roth's arrest and the avalanche of headlines that followed. The world had moved on, but for Nora, every morning here was proof that survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about choosing how to live again. Outside, Marcus Hale knelt on one knee beside the window frame, a brush in his hand, painting the final touches of blue across the wooden sill. His hair had grown slightly, a shade darker from the sun, and the lines around his eyes had softened. He wore a gray t-shirt, his muscular arms freckled with paint. There was a stillness to him now, the kind that came only after long years of noise. Rex lay a few feet away, stretched lazily in the sand, his ears twitching at every passing sound, but his eyes half closed in contentment. The 6-year-old Malinois had adapted quickly to retirement, his old vigilance replaced by the quiet satisfaction of belonging. "Looks good," Nora said, stepping outside with 2 mugs of coffee. "You missed a spot, though." Marcus glanced up, the corner of his mouth twitching. "You're seeing reflections, not mistakes." She laughed softly and handed him a cup. Their fingers brushed, a brief warmth in the morning air. "You know," she said, leaning against the post, "I still can't believe people come here just because of that article. Yesterday, a woman drove from Tampa just to order a latte and say she supports the girl who stood up. I didn't even know how to respond." "You smiled," Marcus said. "That's more than enough." A seagull landed on the railing nearby, eyeing them with greedy curiosity. Rex's ears perked up, but he didn't move, simply gave a disapproving huff. Nora smiled. Even he's learned to relax. "Give him time," Marcus said. "He's still on patrol in his head." He took a sip of coffee, staring out at the waves. "Maybe we both are." For a while, they were silent, watching the light shift across the water. The radio inside played softly, a local news update mentioning Vivian Roth's upcoming trial. Her lawyers had delayed proceedings, claiming stress-related health issues, but the evidence Reyes collected was airtight. The story had become a national spectacle. From power to prison, the fall of Vivian Roth. Nora's voice broke. The silence. "Do you ever regret it? Walking away from your family's world?" Marcus shook his head. "There's nothing to regret. My family's world was built on image. This one," he gestured toward the sea, the cafe, the sand, "this is real." He turned toward her. "You?" "I don't regret leaving the catering job," she said, smiling faintly, "but sometimes I wonder how many Noras are still out there, still afraid to look someone like Vivian in the eye." "Then maybe the Brave Cup isn't just a name," Marcus said. "It's a place for people like that, for anyone who needs to remember their worth." As he spoke, the bell above the cafe door jingled, and a woman stepped inside. A stranger, though her face carried a kind of gentle authority. She looked to be in her mid-50s, with sun-creased skin and sandy hair tied back in a low ponytail. She wore a linen blouse, khaki slacks, and the kind of calm expression belonging to someone who had lived through many tempests. "Morning," she said warmly. "I'm sorry to intrude. You're Nora, right?" "Yes," Nora replied, surprised. The woman smiled. "My name's Captain Helen Brooks. I run the local rescue unit along the coast." Her handshake was firm. "I read about what happened in Miami. The courage you both showed, it struck a chord. We could use people like you here." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Rescue unit?" Helen nodded. "Search and recovery, mostly. Hurricanes, missing boats, people in trouble who think they can outswim the tide. My crew's small, and some of them could use a leader who understands pressure." She looked at him directly. "Someone who's been in worse storms." Marcus hesitated. The word storm pulled at something deep inside him. "You don't even know me," he said. "I know the kind of person who runs toward danger when others run away," Helen replied. "The uniform doesn't matter. That's instinct, not training." Nora watched Marcus's face shift, the flicker of the soldier beneath the civilian calm. "It sounds like you're not done saving people," she said softly. He looked at her, then back at Helen. "I'll think about it," he said finally. Helen nodded, her smile understanding. The sea has a way of giving people second chances. Sometimes it just needs another pair of hands. She left her card on the counter, thanked them for the coffee, and walked out into the sunlight. When she was gone, Nora turned to Marcus. "You're going to take it, aren't you?" He shrugged, hiding the hint of purpose creeping back into his eyes. "Maybe. I guess the sea and I aren't done arguing yet." That night, after closing, Nora wiped the last table while Marcus sat by the open door, Rex at his feet. The moon hung low, spilling silver over the sand. From the radio came a slow, quiet song, something wistful, almost hopeful. Nora hummed along, her voice barely a whisper. "You know," she said, "when I named this place the Brave Cup, I was scared no one would come. I thought it sounded foolish." Marcus smiled. It sounded like truth. She paused, looking at him. "And what about you? What are you going to call this new life?" He didn't answer right away. The waves rolled in, the dog shifted beside him. Then quietly he said, "Whatever it is, I want it to start here." She placed her hand over his on the table. For the first time, neither of them looked away. Outside, the sea stretched endless and alive, and the first hint of dawn began to color the edge of the world again. When the waves meet the morning light, they don't ask why they must rise again. They simply do, because that's how the sea breathes. And maybe life is the same. After every storm, after every fall, we rise not by our own strength alone, but by the quiet mercy of something greater. Marcus and Nora's story is not just about justice, it's about grace, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't demand attention, but works quietly through people who choose kindness when the world teaches cruelty. Some call it fate, others call it courage. But perhaps it is a small miracle from God, a reminder that even in our darkest hours, His hand still moves through the simplest acts of love, loyalty, and redemption. In our daily lives, we may never stand before billionaires or fight storms at sea, but we all face our own battles, the quiet ones no one else sees. Maybe your storm is doubt, loneliness, or loss, and yet each time you choose to forgive, to show compassion, to keep believing when it's easier to give up, that's your miracle. That's your faith at work. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it. Leave a comment. Tell us what you believe is your small miracle. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel so together we can keep spreading stories that restore hope and remind the world that goodness still wins. May God bless and protect everyone who watches this story. May He grant you peace in your storms, strength in your trials, and light in your every dawn.